The mythology of the Tower of Babel is also found in various tribes around the world. Another story, attributed to the historian Fernando de Alva Cortés Ixtlilxochitl, c.1565-1648, to the ancient Toltecs, states that after humans had multiplied after the Great Flood, they erected tall zacuali or towers, to guard themselves in the event of a second flood. However, their language was confused and they went to separate parts of the earth. Still another story, attributed to the Indian Tohono O'odham, holds that Montezuma escaped a great flood, then became evil and tried to build a house that reached heaven, but the Great Spirit destroyed it with lightning. Bancroft, Volume 3, p. 76, also in History of Arizona. According to David Livingstone, the African he met living near Lake Nami in 1849 had such a tradition, but with the builder's head, split open by the fall of the scaffolding. Missionary Journey, Chapter 26. In his 1918 book Folklore in the Old Testament, Scottish social anthropologist Sir James George Fraser documents similarities between Old Testament stories, such as the flood, and indigenous legends around the world. He identifies Livingstone with a fairy tale found in Lozi mythology, in which evil men build a colonnade to pursue the god creator, Nyamp, who had fled to heaven with spider webs, but the people perished when the pillar collapsed. He next tells a similar story about Ashanti replacing a pile of alu porridge for poles. Fraser also cites such legends found among the Congolese, as well as in Tanzania, where people stick poles or trees in an unsuccessful attempt to reach the moon. He further quotes the Karbi and Kuki people of Assam who have similar stories. The tradition of the Karen people of Myanmar, which Fraser considers to exhibit a clear Abrahamic influence, also relates that their ancestors migrated there after the abandonment of a large pagoda on the land of the 30th generation of Karenni from Adam, when the languages were confused and Karen separated from Karenni. He notes another version currently in the Admiralty Islands where human language is confused after a failed attempt to build a home to heaven. Somewhat similar traces of stories have also been reported among Taru in Nepal and northern India. The Babylonian story, as told by Abedinus, says that once men built a tall tower in which is now Babylon, and when it was close to heaven, the gods sent winds and ruined the whole plan. And man, having up to that time all spoke up about the same thing, and recorded in culture as if it were from the gods of many languages. Quote, this tradition of burning the skies destroying the minarets is also a hallmark of some Mesoamerican accounts. For example, the legend recorded by Pedro de los Rios regarding the base of the Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico. After the waters of deluge recede, one of the survivors is welcomed to Cholula, where he begins to build a large building. It used to be the aim was to lift the great building into the clouds, but the gods, offended by his assumption, threw the fire of heaven into the pyramid, many workers died, and the building remained unfinished. J. G. Fraser, Folklore in Old Testament Volume 1, London, 1918. Another Mexican tradition, recorded by Diego Duran in 1579 relates the names of the giants who built a tower that almost reached the sky, when it was destroyed by lightning. On Hao Island, part of the island of Tuamotu, or Tuamotu, in Polynesia, people used to say that after the Great Flood, the children of Rata, who had survived, attempted to erect a building with which they could reach the sky and see the creator god Vatia, or Atea. But God in anger pursued the builders, destroyed the building, and changed their language, so they spoke in tongues. In the archipelago, the Tower of Babel is depicted on Borobudur. This illustrates that the nations around Babel had also visited the Lemuria civilization before Atlantis came to the archipelago. Borobudur is a monument made by the Lemuria civilization, which is the central area of the Great Empire. This is reflected in the monument that was made, which signifies many reliefs with faces that are not local residents of the archipelago. Note the similarity in the shape of the Tower of Babel with the reliefs in Borobudur. Also pay attention to the human figure that hovers above the altitude. Were there any former people who had the ability to fly over the Earth's gravity? Only the Lemurians could do it. Levitation hovered above the Earth's surface. The Lemurian civilization and culture in the archipelago, which underlies the teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism in India, the knowledge and lessons developed by Buddhists about levitation, which are still adhered to by several strict Buddhist sects, by the Bhiksu, which are kept secret and still exist today. So Borobudur is a monument where previous people gathered to learn about progress. The original teachings of the archipelago were not Hindu or Buddhist, let alone animism and dynamism, not It is the teachings of the archipelago that underlie the teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism in India. If we study the history of the spread of Hinduism from India, it has never been recorded that Hindu missionaries spread their teachings, because this is a prohibition for bhiksu in India. Let us return to the discussion of the Ad people as the ancestors of immigrants in the archipelago, namely the Atlantis civilization which later developed in the archipelago, which at the peak of the Atlantic civilization was Queen Bilqis with the Saba Empire, which later Prophet Suleiman would straighten out the teachings of Matahari Saba in the archipelago. This is reflected in the relief of the lower part of Borobudur, which is currently being covered by reasons of the safety of the building. On the part of the covered relief, there are some unfinished reliefs, because those demons who worked to leave their work to perfect Borobudur went scattered, after knowing Solomon died. The people of Aad were destroyed by a tremendous wind sent by Allah SWT. As for the people of Aad, they have been destroyed by a very cold, very strong wind QS. Al-Haka. And also in Ad's story, when we sent them the wind that destroys, the wind did not let anything go through, but made it like powder. Surah Ad-Zariyat 41 and 42. So we blew a very thunderous wind upon them in these few unlucky days, for we wanted to feel to them the humiliating torment of the life of the world. And surely the torment of the hereafter is more humiliating, while they are not being given help. Surah Fussilat 16. And from several references the Tower of Babel was destroyed by the wind in between. However, in other sources such as the Book of Jubilees, chapter 10b.18-27, Cornelius Alexander, Frag. 10, Abedinus, Frags. 5 and 6, Josephus, Antiquities 1.4.3, and the Sibylline Oracles e. 117-129. God overturns the tower with a great wind. Here are other references that the Tower of Babel was destroyed by the wind. Many sources relate to the destruction of the Tower of Babel, according to the story of the culture in Mexico, that the calamity was caused by strong winds. Sibyl is said to have the prophecy. When filled with threats from the great God with which he threatened mankind, when formerly in the land of Assyria they built a tower, and all from one word, and want to rise even until they climb to the starry heavens, then the immortal raised a fierce wind and gave them strong need. For when the winds threw down the mighty tower, then rise up among mankind with bitter strife and full of hatred. One language was turned into many dialects of languages, and the earth was filled with tribes and kings. The Babylonian story, as told by Abedinus, says that once human civilization built a tall tower in which is now Babylon, and when it was near heaven, the gods sent winds and ruined the whole plan. And men, after that time all spoke the same language, from the gods to creating many languages. Apart from the wind, Allah SWT also sent lightning to destroy the people of Aad. If they turn away, then say, I have warned you with a thunderbolt, like a thunderbolt that befell the people of Ad in the ocean. Surah Fussilat 13. And this incident of the tower that was destroyed by lightning is still recorded in several mythologies. Other accounts suggest that there was a strong lightning current, perhaps from an overly large ionosphere, and found a contact body or ground in the tall structure. According to a tradition known to 12th century explorer Benjamin of Tudela, a fire from heaven fell in the center of the tower and destroyed it. Sanhedrin 11 Tract, Fol 109a, Seder Nezikin, Transl. By H. Friedman, ed. by I. Epstein, London, 1935 p. 748. The tradition of burning the heavens destroying the towers is also a feature of some Mesoamerican records, for example, the legend recorded by Pedro de los Rios regarding the base of the Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico. After the waters deluge had receded, one of the survivors of Welcome to Cholula, where he began to build a large building. That was the aim, to lift the great building into the clouds, but the gods, offended by his presumption, threw the fires of heaven into the pyramids, many workers died, and the building remained unfinished. J. G. Fraser. Folklore, Old Testament. London, 1918. Fraser adds that, it is said that at the time of the Spanish conquest, the inhabitants of Cholula recorded with great reverence a large aerolite, which they think was a thunderbolt which fell on the pyramid and burned it. Eb Tyler. Anahuac Halaman 277. Another Mexican tradition, recorded by Diego Duran in 1579, knowing the giant who built a tower that almost reached the sky, when it was crushed by lightning. In summary, there are three factors supporting the allegation that the Aad people are the nation that built the tallest tower in the world, or the Tower of Babel. 1. The verse in the Quran tells of the very tall buildings built by the Aad and never built by any other nation on this earth. 2. The Tower of Babel is the tallest tower on earth. The Aad are the successors of the Prophet Noah, as according to the Quran. The Tower of Babel was also built after the Great Flood incident. 3. The Aad were destroyed by the wind and thunder. The Tower of Babel was also destroyed by the wind and thunder. 4. My guess is very strong that the possibility of the Aad people is the nation that built the tallest tower in the world, namely the Tower of Babel. And this makes us interested in examining another possibility, namely the relationship between the Aad people and the mythological character Atlas. 5. There are several similarities, including 1. In terms of the names Aad and Atlas have similar prefixes. As additional information, the Aad people are often referred to by the Arabs as the Adites. The word Adites is close to the word Adityas, which in Indian mythology describes the Devas. The Adityas in Indian mythology have many similarities with the Titans in Greek mythology. One of the similarities is that they are both giants. One of the members of the Titans in Greek mythology is Atlas. 2. Both are giants. 3. The Aad are the successors of the prophet Noah, as whereas in Greek mythology the father of Atlas is Iapetus. Iapetus is often suspected of being Japheth, one of the sons of Noah, the U.S. In the Bible, Genesis 9:27 states, God will raise, physically, Japheth. So Japheth and his descendants have gigantic physiques. 4. Atlas is always symbolized as a support for heaven and earth. But actually Atlas is also symbolized as the holder, maker of the pillars that hold heaven and earth. This is told in Homer's Iliad story. And this is also reinforced by the story of the Pillars of Hercules, where Hercules temporarily holds the pillars that had been held by Atlas. These pillars were probably so high that they almost touched the sky. Compared with the pillars of the Aad people, who are told are also very high. And in addition to info, Atalas in Sanskrit also means pillar. 5. Researchers estimate that the ancestors of the Arabs, namely the Adites, were descendants of a person named Ad, the grandson of Ham bin Na. According to Plato, the founder of Atlantis is Poseidon. The researchers argue that it is likely that Poseidon is Sidon bin Canaan bin Ham bin Na. Sidon is the grandson of Ham bin Na. Meanwhile, Atlas was the son of Poseidon and the first king of Atlantis according to Plato. 6. The Aad are depicted as people who are proud of their strength and like to torture ruthlessly and cruelly. The Titans, of which Atlas is one of them, are a group of giants that used to rule the world. After that, because of their cruelty, God destroyed them. One of the 12 workers of the hero Heracles is to retrieve some of the golden apples growing in Hera's garden, which are tended by Atlas's daughter, Hesperides, and guarded by the dragon Ladon. Heracles went to Atlas and offered to lift the sky while Atlas took apples from his children. On his return with the apples, however, Atlas attempted to trick Heracles into permanently lifting the heavens by offering to give up the apple himself, just as one who deliberately takes a burden has to carry it forever, or until someone else takes it. Heracles, guessing that Atlas didn't mean to return, pretended to agree to Atlas's offer, only asking that Atlas took up the sky again for a few minutes so Heracles could rearrange his robe like a pillow on his shoulders. When Atlas put down the apple and took the sky on his shoulder again, Heracles took the apple and ran. In some versions, Heracles instead built 2 great pillars of Hercules to hold the heavens away from the earth, freeing Atlas just as he freed Prometheus. Homer's Iliad. Easy read, with Homer's description of Atlas, holding tall pillars that guard the divided earth and heaven. Robert Graves. Iapetus has been identified with Japhet, the son of Noah, by virtue of their similarity of names and an old Jewish tract tradition, which made Japhet the ancestor of the Greeks, Slavs, Teutons, Dravidians. See Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews. Iapetus is associated with 11th century theologian Yaheth Matthew Poole and more recently by John Pearman Brown. The Bible, Genesis 9:27, may God enlarge Japheth, and let him live in Shem's tents, and let Canaan be his servant. Atlas itself, according to Plato's Critias text, is the king and the first son of the founder of Atlantis, Poseidon. In this mountain lived an ancient human named Evenor, and he had a wife named Leucippe, and they had their only daughter who was called Cleito. The girl had already reached maturity when her father and mother died, Poseidon falling in love with her and having intercourse with her, and breaking the land, covering the hills where she lives all round, making the alternate zone of sea and land larger and smaller, circling each other. There are 2 earths and 3 waters, which he ignites by puncturing them, each of which has a perimeter far in all directions. The center, so that no one can get to the island, for ships and shipping does not yet exist. He himself, being the master, found no difficulty in making special arrangements for the central island, brought 2 springs from beneath the earth, one warm water and the other cold, and made every variety of food grow abundantly from the land. He also raised 5 pairs of twin boys, and dividing the island of Atlantis into 10 parts, he gave to the firstborn. Fix his mother's dwelling and allotment around him, which is the greatest and the best, and make him king over the rest. The other he made princes, and gave them power over many people, and large territories. And he named them all. The oldest, who was the first king, was called Atlas, and after him all the islands and seas were called Atlantic. Atlantic in ancient Greek means, Island Atlas.